Well, it's RPG rant time again. Macabre Derek speaking, as always. And today I wanted to give a little bit of a rant around delivery, tone, and pacing. I was listening to a few Let's Plays, well, not really Let's Plays, but RPG sessions, primarily based around Vampire the Masquerade, but there's been a few Dungeons and Dragons games that well, I've made it a point of trying to be inspired. While some of the plots have been actually quite interesting, some of the characters have been, well, fair bit gripping. One of the very common things I see is that many of them approach it with the lights twinkle and the city is set to receive another night of very, very monotone, very difficult to grasp hold. You notice that I'm pausing a fair bit. There's a reason for a pause at any given time. The reason is because you're giving people a moment to think, to let them have that information sink in. The change of a pitch suddenly makes a few words stand out. However, something spoken quiet and whispers implies a secret, maybe even a little bit of malicious intent. Facial expressions can change a tone of a given setting. You can end up making sure that everything is very energetic, and suddenly the room just seems to pop, becomes alive as it's a party. Everybody is having fun. There's energy in the room, and so you end up speaking with a little bit more speed, almost a rhythmic pulse to every word that ends up coming out of your mouth. You end up deciding to end up bringing that energy in the room up because your tone ended up changing, and all of a sudden everybody's having a grand old time. You can end up playing around with just the way you end up approaching things. And if you want something to be dark and dreadful, well, that's where I come in. That slow, methodical pace of description can change the entire atmosphere. The tone, something low, almost growling, almost like you have something caught in your throat, makes something a little off, maybe a little unnerving. Somebody who speaks very crisp and clean gives a completely different delivery, one to be considered. How do you feel when somebody speaks like this? It could be interesting to play around with your voice, changing around with the pitch, changing around with the subtle hints. The vocal cords shift and become something that delivers a story most will always hanging on to. On occasion, you can stumble. That's okay. It ends up happening. The truth of the matter is, though, that what all tone is practice. How do you practice? Well, first off, read. Read aloud to yourself. Maybe even record it. If you can cite a verse or two of a song, you can probably end up coming up with something that sounds, well, to the tone. It would be one thing to read the description of a book. It'd be another to Well, do it in a voice that brings the gravitas that it requires, or the humor. Sometimes you just want something that's a little slapstick. Sometimes you want something that's a little all over the place. That's not a bad idea, especially if you're in something that's a little chaotic. That could be fun. Could be very, very fun indeed, because you have control over how that story is portrayed. It's a very powerful tool for any ST or player. Players, do not think that this is entirely on your ST, your flame tender, your game master, your dungeon master, whatever you care to call them. Because the reality is that tone for your character is set by how you present it. And it can be difficult at times, it really can be. I think frequently to some of my earlier portrayals of characters. Their voices were never quite right. The tone of everything didn't seem quite right. If you have a hard time with this, however, there are a few things you can do. Change your language. I don't mean learn Japanese or German or something of the like. Yeah. Though having a bit of French or Spanish accent sometimes elevates a character with the occasional verbal slip. No, I'm talking about how you describe a scene, what you're doing. You can describe that when your character enters the room, that it feels like the air has gone stale in it. It just pulls out from all the lungs of those requiring it. You could also discuss the vibrance, the fascination, the allure, maybe. Using words specifically designed to invoke an emotional response. Well, that sometimes ends up helping too, as long as you don't play too heavy handed with it. Don't be too hard on yourself if you end up doing that, though. Everybody started somewhere, and RPGs as a hobby is a craft. You slowly start to pick up on little things. What about pacing? It's not only about fast and slow, it's about cues. And this is the hardest one because almost every time I've tried to play around with this, something unique happens. When I'm doing a pause, if I end up hanging that pause on for too long for dramatic effect, somebody will take that as a point of I'm waiting for a response. Treat these very much like a conversation. And if somebody ends up jumping on you like that and suddenly gives you a response before you finish the description, well, play around with it. Another thing you can do is visual cues. You notice I am speaking with my hands a lot. That actually helps a lot. Sometimes when I'm finished a description, I will lean back. Me fading away from the spotlight and giving it back to the next player. It helps a lot. And I'll do this when I'm at the table. I'll do this when I'm on camera. Just get people used to these habits. If they can see it and they get used to it, there's things that can end up helping. A little tip when it comes down to intensity. Make it clear. Stop with every word, every third word. Drag it out. Suddenly you end up having this very odd, unnerving shift. The stability of a character may fall into question. Sometimes the tone doesn't quite match what it is the pacing is telling. That kind of dissonance makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes it's the mannerisms, the chewing on fingernails or gliding it over your teeth. The need to stroke a goatee, or maybe your character has a Fu Manchu style facial hair. The occasional look to the side, maybe. Uncertainty. One thing that you can pick up, kind of a bonus, is that more often than not, people are used to others speaking to them face to face, looking at each other, facing one another. Remember, it tells a very different thing if your facing is one way and your eyes are another. You will want to go to where your eyes are focused. Your head will tell you where you want to be going. It's a very strange little habit. Watch people like that. You can develop a whole new repertoire. Why am I telling all this? Well, it's because a lot of times when people give a delivery, it comes across as a little flat. That flatness can make it a little bit difficult to immerse yourself further into the game. That's okay. It just bringing it up that one notch. This is something I found helps a lot, especially if you're playing something that's deranged, insane. Dangerous. Try and end up changing your oratory performance. Play around with it. Have fun with the ability to change your voice on a whim, not just with accents, not just in pitch, but in tone. How you deliver something can make a world of difference. If you found this video helpful, press the like button. Helps a bit. If you want to end up following along for some more RPG rants and maybe a few one-shots that'll be coming down the road, follow along with the content, well, you know where that subscribe button is. And if you have a topic you'd like me to end up covering or something you want to know my thoughts on, well, that's what the comment section's for. Until next time.